What's up, guys? This is Dennis. Welcome to Shington Boats. If you haven't subscribed, if you're new to the channel yet, love to have you as a subscriber. Today we're going to take a look at my first project boat. Had a couple of other small boats before this. Had a tandem kayak and then a single kayak that I am way too big for. Almost turned the thing over a bunch of times. But this is my first boat with a motor. So what we have here is a 1950s aluminum hull boat. This was a Craigslist purchase for me. We're going to go over everything that is wrong with my new project. So this is about the condition that I got it in. Bought it from a guy up near the Canadian border. $1,000 for the trailer, the motor, and the boat. This is a 15-foot aluminum boat. It was originally actually a speedboat, hence the, or maybe like a water ski boat, hence the interesting layout. There's not actually a third seat back here. This wasn't originally meant to be a boat without a top. And I've got some pictures I'll show you later on that show what the boat would originally look like, but this is about how I got it. What can I say about it? It's a little bit ugly. Has got a pretty stellar rattle can paint job on it. But as a whole, structurally, it's really good. The guy that I got it from said it had been in a field for probably 30 or 40 years. He had traded some work for it with a guy, and then he sold it to me. His original intent, and something that I was thinking about as well, was making it into a bay boat, something with a center console that you would drive while standing, and then could fish off of or something like that. But it is not quite long enough for that. I'll tell you that story at a later time. So when I first saw this boat, it made me think, oh wow, look at how tall that freeboard is. I bet that's going to be a really seaworthy boat. And then I got out on the water in some chop, pretty good amount of chop, and I realized just how flat the bottom of this boat really is. If you look at it from front to back, you know, the freeboard and the this kind of splash rail here that runs the distance almost of the whole hull is pretty deceiving. The back half of the transom here is probably the best shot. Shows this thing is almost dead flat. So not really meant for being out on the ocean in any kind of waves. Great lake boat. When I got this boat, it had never been titled, so I did my first titling on it, which was interesting because it didn't have a hull number, a hull ID number. The original hull ID number is, where is it? Right there, 2893. It's made by a company called Naden out of Webster City, Iowa. Naden apparently made boats for quite a few years, back in going up into the 70s and 80s, and then went into scoreboards or something else along that line. I'm sorry, it is really cold out here. So anyway, so more about the boat. Obviously has been a little bit neglected. We've got some serious cleanup to do on the inside. We've got peeling paint on the outside. There actually is a factory paint color underneath this, but you wouldn't know it from looking at it. I've already made some modifications to cut down the splash well. Got some missing sheet metal back there. We've got some old cables. This is a 1968 or 1970 Evinrude 60 horsepower. There we go. And it is way too much power for this boat in this configuration. I had it out with the family and got a little sideways on it, and it was definitely too much. So probably will not be leaving this engine on here in this configuration unless I can find some way to better balance the boat. That's the other thing, is with this much engine on the back of a boat that is this big, it really just sits in the water like this, and it's hard to get it up on a plane. So When the boat originally was designed, it came with a pulley system. The driver's position was about here. There was pulleys that came in through here. This is where the throttle was mounted to. And then there was actually some ropes that went all the way to the back, mounted up here and over there. And that pulled the engine. So obviously they don't allow those anymore because they're not particularly safe, and didn't want to have something like that on there for the family. So we'll be looking at some kind of telex system, or maybe a Morse control. I think that they may actually be the same company, but still trying to figure that out. Let me pull the engine down here and we'll take another. Okay, so a little bit more about the engine. Like I mentioned before, did not come with a tiller or a hydraulic setup. This was before, when the boat was designed, or the motor was designed to go with a boat like this that actually had a pulley system. If you look at the cables themselves, the pigtail is actually in reasonably good condition, aside from the fact that it's sitting in water right now. And I took the motor to one of my local shops here. They went through it, said that the motor's actually in pretty good condition. What we'll need to do, though, is figure out how to get that steering system on there. So had an idea about that didn't work out so well for me. I'll tell you more about that later. But now we're trying to figure out, okay, are we going to leave this motor on the boat? Probably not. And if we don't, then what are we going to do with it? Because it's not really saleable as a motor for a modern boat. It's a couple $100 to get a hydraulic system connected to it, and then of course you have to have the steering system as well. So more to come on that. The motor itself, the casing up top here leaves a little to be desired. It's not super watertight, but other than that, it's mostly aesthetic looking problems. They said that the gear drive propeller was in reasonable shape, not too many bends down there. For something that's over 40 years old as a boat motor, not too bad. The trailer, galvanized trailer, in reasonably good condition on the trailer, but the rest of the accessories leave something to be desired. Needs new bunks, probably needs new LED lights here. They're in okay shape, but if I'm going to go ahead and rewire the whole thing, I'll probably just put new lights on it as well. Obviously the side markers aren't connected. This would be the lights themselves, or the wires for the lights themselves. And just got some rusty components here. This is mostly surface rust, and this boat isn't very heavy, so I'm not too concerned about that from a structural perspective, but maybe we'll try and clean it up a little bit as we go as well. Other things we'll be doing, taking a look at the mounting hardware. Probably get a piece of diamond plate up here, maybe a little ballast if we go ahead and decide to power the boat after all. Another thing we'll take a look at, when I had this boat going full rip, I came to realize that this is way too low. So ideally, the top of the, how did that go? The top of the propeller should be about even with the bottom of the boat, and you got a good 4 or 5 inches down there. So we either need to bring up the transom, which has some benefits to it, or we need to bring up the actual motor itself, get something with a shorter shaft on it. I'm not quite sure which I want to do yet, but when you are running this boat all out and then it starts to slow down, the wave of water behind really washes up and flows into this area, which I'm not sure why those were popular when these were built in the beginning. Probably won't continue that on. So either pull the transom up or just decide that it's going to be a rowboat, or maybe a little electric powered motor in there or something for the kids to play with and have some fun with. So where am I going with this thing? I'm going to be, first off, stripping all the paint off. Aluminum is a very practical thing to have here in the Northwest. Looking at getting it down to the bare aluminum and then probably just leaving it that way on the outside, putting some kind of non-slip protective coating on the inside Not that the aluminum really needs it, but it definitely will make it a little bit more enjoyable to sit in, as well as make it look a little better, last a little longer. We'll also be looking at what do we want for a power system for this boat. Hopefully I'll be able to get an interview with Tom of Tom's Outboard here in Olympia. He's got some ideas on how to appropriately power a boat. He's got some ideas on making sure that you've got enough power so you don't run the thing at full throttle all the time, which is really hard on the motors. If we're going to even do a motor, we may end up going with oars, and this may be something fun for the kids to play in, and it may be primarily for the YouTube channel as we kind of get going with this. But it's the middle of winter right now. Can't do a whole lot of boating in this, so I'm gonna have some fun in the garage here with the project while we get ready for the season. So this is it. I've got some serious material to remove.